Hello, this is the final chapter of the series on Shivaji, the Great Maratha. If you have recently arrived on the channel, I welcome you, and I invite you to watch the previous 2 episodes to fully understand what this is about. For the lazy ones among you, and those who don't remember well, I'll give you a summary to get you back into it and allow you to follow along without any problem. We are in the 17th century in India, in Maharashtra, which is a region located in the center of the Indian subcontinent. Shivaji. The subject of the trilogy is a young leader of the Hindu people, the Marathas, who are the vast majority in this territory, and who successfully led what was essentially an uprising against the local Muslim rulers. This occurred despite significant differences between the forces. At that time, various Muslim rulers dominated the Indian subcontinent. After multiple invasions from present-day Iran and Afghanistan, the most powerful among them is the Mughal Empire. And I said Mughal, not Mongol. They are not the same. Their capital was then in Agra, in northern India, and their authority extended at that time from the Indus in the west to the Bay of Bengal in the east, and from the Himalayas in the north to the Deccan Plateau in the south. As you can see on the screen, Shivaji, the Maratha leader, was, as we saw in previous episodes, a devout Hindu without being sectarian, a good manager and a competent, ambitious leader of men. From Pune, he carved a place for himself through cunning, successful raids, and bold actions. An autonomous territory grew at the expense of nearby Muslim states, uniting more Maratha chiefs with each victory and establishing Hindu self-rule in a mainly Hindu area dominated by Islamic forces. He surprised the Indian states by neutralizing the Sultanate of Bijapur, which ruled his native Maharashtra. Relying on the Maratha warrior doctrine of Ganimi Kava mentioned in the previous chapter, Shivaji unexpectedly defeated the great power of the time, the Mughal Empire. To put you more directly back into the context of the previous episode, it's a bit like if Belgium gave Germany a big slap and sent the German army back across the border with their tails between their legs. As much as we can imagine in soccer, militarily, it's unlikely the Germans would be defeated by just the Belgian army. That's exactly what happened in 1663 when Shivaji used intense guerrilla warfare and a daring surprise attack to repel the invasion. After the Mughal failure, the Marathas looted the empire's largest trading port. Consequently, Emperor Aurangzeb takes the threat from this dynamic Hindu leader very seriously, especially since the recent Maratha successes are, according to the various sources I have consulted, seen as personal affronts to his authority, Mughal. To do this, he sent one of his most competent and experienced generals, Raja Jai Singh. He managed to successfully counter the Maratha tactics and then succeeded in trapping Shivaji in the fort of Purandar. We'd left him in a tough spot before, but we'd seen him escape difficult situations and turn things around. But this time, he's up against a general who isn't just experienced, unlike his previous opponents, but most importantly, who truly understands the Marathas' methods and knows how to counter and oppose them. Let's get back to Shivaji. In fact, the Marathas will try to get out of this dangerous situation for several months, trying to regain momentum and disrupt the Mughal setup. However, attacks from outside the fort are easily neutralized due to Jai Singh's effective setup. As a reminder, he had set up heavily defended posts from which fast forces could launch lightning counterattacks against the Marathas, who were already particularly fast for that time. Meanwhile, the Mughals gradually gained ground in the siege, while bombarding and even crushing the fort of Purandar under projectiles. Nevertheless, it is a real head-on clash that takes place, with each side determined and well-led, resulting in a long and brutally daily standoff. The Marathas fight hard against the Mughals for every inch of ground, using everything they have, for example, filling bags with explosive powder and dropping them on the siege equipment. This slows or temporarily halts the Mughal advance. A daring sortie aims to eliminate Jai Singh's right-hand man, Dalir Khan. This would open a breach in the Mughal formation, allowing for a potential evacuation of the fort. But this bloody sortie leaves several hundred Maratha dead from a garrison that started the siege with just 2,000 men and fails to achieve the goal. Little by little, the noose tightens, and by early June 1665, the situation is clear. Shivaji is completely trapped and thus defeated. It's a total failure, and yet Jai Singh, who has him at his mercy, is not simply going to destroy him. But why? Well, to understand that, you have to take the Mughal perspective, and especially that of Jai Singh. On the Mughal emperor's orders, his goal is for the Mughals to control the entire Deccan. In other words, not just Shivaji's lands, but mainly the declining sultanates of Bijapur and Golconda. It's important to understand this, since Jai Singh's strategy is to isolate and deal with Shivaji first, so he'd only face 2 dying states after. It's a bit like when you eat the vegetables you don't like on your plate first, so you can save the good part for last. Jai Singh aims to establish a weak, isolated stepmotherly authority that's easy to control, effectively killing 2 birds with 1 stone. Thus, he could use it for his true goal, the Mughal conquest of the Deccan. That's why Jai Singh holds the Shivaji effect and the essence of the emerging stepmother state at his mercy. He won't destroy it. Instead, he'll set up a framework so the Mughals can rely on it for the rest of the campaign. In the Deccan, Mughal-Maratha negotiations lead to the Treaty of Purandar, where Shivaji surrenders many forts. He actually keeps 12 out of the 35 he owned and, in a way, becomes a vassal of the Mughal Empire, while still being recognized as the ruler of his domain. From now on, Shivaji is required to respond to Mughal calls to arms in case of war, and must go to Agra, the capital of the Mughal Empire at that time. Accompanied by his son, Sambhaji, and part of his army, to meet the emperor and pay him homage, with Jai Singh personally assuring him it wouldn't endanger his life to go there. Shivaji didn't end up so badly after all, even though he was completely defeated. He owes much to Jai Singh, who recognizes the value a chained Shivaji holds for the emperor, as I mentioned earlier. This was despite some Mughal commanders with him urging harsh and humiliating revenge. At the end of 1665 on Jai Singh's orders, Shivaji briefly joined the Mughals to conquer the Sultanate of Bijapur. Shivaji and his son were received coldly the following year, which the Marathas saw as disrespectful. In Agra, then the Mughal Empire's capital, Shivaji saw himself as the rightful ruler of his lands and state. Though the Mughal emperor was theoretically recognized as sovereign, he was seen mainly as an administrator. His rebellion against a dying state succeeded, but his authority had to come from Mughal power, not his own actions. The Mughals believe the lands belong to the empire, but are managed by Shivaji's administration. Shivaji sees himself as sovereign in his domain, yet on behalf of that domain remains a vassal of the emperor. The Maratha receives only relative honors, and reacts so badly that several scandals occur, which the emperor receives extremely poorly, as you can imagine. This tense situation results in his house arrest in the capital, effectively making him a Mughal prisoner. The situation stays the same because he keeps causing trouble as usual. His life was truly in danger for several days. Shivaji quickly becomes aware of this, and what motivates him to find a way will eventually lead him to succeed. And there are several versions of his escape regarding this. However, historian Gordon Stewart, presenting the most up-to-date perspective, believes that he simply bribed his guards before slipping away during the night. Shivaji, after sending his escort back days earlier, faced a long, difficult month of hardship before reaching Raigad, his new capital. In the Maratha mountains, where he arrived in poor condition, as he reached it sick and exhausted, the Maratha nevertheless renewed, despite his major frictions, his submission to the Mughals, aware of the fact that the Mughals now had the ability to keep him in check. This also suited the Mughals, who were dealing with other enemies, both internal and external, while having demobilized their Deccan army. Between 1667 and late 1669, the Maratha territory enjoyed a few years of relative calm. He used this to strengthen his position and launch minor raids against the Bijapuris. In autumn 1669, the Mughals resumed hostilities. First, diplomatically, by sending Shivaji the intentionally large bill for his Agra visit 3 years prior. It's no surprise that Shivaji won't pay that bill. He clearly sees the threat in this message, inviting the Mughals to take what they want or punish him. In fact, from the Mughal perspective, this provocation is not without reason, because it seems that Aurangzeb believes he has identified serious collusion between his governor of the Deccan and Shivaji, even fearing that he might be overthrown by his own governor with the support of the Maratha. It's unclear if these fears were justified, but Shivaji and Aurangzeb's relationship was always strained. Each adapted pragmatically to the situation until action was possible. The Maratha, relying on a real state and a modern, efficient army, will do what he does best: lead lightning attacks and extremely fast raids. Within months, he reclaims all the concessions he was forced to make 5 years earlier at Purandar. The Marathas plunder Khandesh, Berar, and Baglan, then sack Surat for the second time in October 1670. Caught off guard once again, the Mughals, who at the same time have to deal with other troubles and conflicts within and on the borders of the empire, still will not stand idly by in the face of this situation. A violent counterattack, for example, will allow the Mughals to capture Pune at the end of 1671, where they will massacre all the inhabitants over the age of 9. Before retreating, as the army led by a personally affected Shivaji advanced. Can you imagine it? This is how it went for 4 years, despite a few brief successes like the one I mentioned. The Mughals run up against the Marathas and are defeated several times. Notably during the decisive Battle of Salher, the Marathas again faced unfavorable odds in both numbers and technology. At the same time, as I mentioned a little earlier, the Mughal Empire is experiencing more and more unrest and is dealing with other problems and uprisings throughout its territory. These factors, along with Mughal failures in the campaign, weaken their hold on Shivaji's territories, which are now independent. During this calm, the Maratha decides to formalize what was now reality. Shivaji founds the Maratha kingdom and is crowned in 1674. From then on, Shivaji Bhosle is known as Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj. He implements major administrative reforms and makes Marathi the official language, replacing the Persian used by previous Muslim rulers. As a result, he helps this language thrive and become part of India's cultural landscape. Later, it spread across the subcontinent far beyond where Marathi began, from his coronation until 1680. In addition to continuing the development of this territory and its fleet, he successfully drives the expansion of the Maratha kingdom to strengthen its position against the Muslim rulers. He'll be especially active in the subcontinent south, fighting and eventually winning over his half-brother Ekoji Bhosle, thus attaching his territory in the south of present-day India to the Maratha kingdom. In 1680, after 6 years of a hyperactive reign that strengthened and expanded the Maratha kingdom, Chhatrapati Shivaji fell seriously ill, probably suffering from dysentery. The one who is still called the Great Maratha today breathed his last just a few days before his 53rd birthday. He left behind a kingdom with solid foundations, which would become nothing less than the Hindu Empire, serving as a bridge between the great Islamic invasions of India and British colonization. But that's another story that you'll be able to discover right after this video. Thank you to everyone who follows D-Mystif history. I hope you enjoyed our journey through 17th century India. If that's the case, I invite you to give a thumbs up, subscribe of course, and leave me a little "yeah, that was cool" in the comments. On a more personal note, this character, whom I discovered a few years ago during a trip to Pune, really intrigued me. The more I learned and read about him, the less I understood why I had never heard about him anywhere. Neither here, on social networks like YouTube and Facebook, nor anywhere else. In fact, it's a subcontinent whose history is very poorly known in Europe. And it's usually reduced to the British Raj and sometimes the Mughal Empire, completely ignoring the Maratha Empire, which was founded by Shivaji. The empire was the primary British adversary during the long, challenging colonial conquest of the subcontinent, connecting the two eras. In short, you've now heard about Chhatrapati Shivaji, a historical figure known for his exceptional military, political, and administrative skills. Like a certain Bonaparte in his time in our country. In Maharashtra, he is viewed like Napoleon, and recently his name was given to Mumbai's main airport and central train station. With that, I invite you to continue your exploration of Indian history, whether from the perspective of the history of France and India or of the kingdom. Then under the Maratha Empire after Shivaji,